What's up? What's up? What's up? All you fantasy nuts out there in the world. I know. It just feels like the fantasy season just ended, but it's really just beginning all over again because we've got free agency to talk about, and a lot's happened over the past month. Graham and I have tried to wait to see where all of the dust has settled, but we think it's now that Houston signed a giant free agent from Buffalo. We figured now's the time that we're going to do our spotlight. So we're going to go around the league. And we're going to go division by division, and we'll take turns and we'll talk about winners and losers. Graham, how are you?
I'm great. Had a good day at the pool. Got a lot of kid time, throwing the kids around. It's a beautiful sunny day in Florida, and ready to talk about some free agents. Looking forward to Ravens. Looking forward to hear the team formerly known as the Redskins. What's going on there? And
That's right.
Let's get after it.
Yeah, this is always like a fun time of year for me just to watch. It's always exciting when you see, on Twitter, there's a big move that was made, and to see where all the chips are falling and like the different, shifts in power. And we haven't had the NFL draft yet. We'll talk about that maybe next week a little bit with some of our predictions, and that helps solidify everything. But just some of these free agents going to different teams, it changes the whole complexion of an NFL offense. So it's fun to talk about. And I figured we'd go division by division, and Graham, I'm gonna give you the first division. If you want to go through team by team, note some highlights, how have their teams changed? And you want to start with the AFC North, since your favorite team, the Baltimore Ravens, lie within that division. Tell us what's going on there, man.
Yeah, for the AFC North, which is one of the most competitive divisions in the NFL. Lots of good rivalries there across the board. We saw some good things. We're going to start with the Steelers, right? I'm going to start with the team that I love to hate the most. But without the Steelers, the Baltimore, Pittsburgh, that's just a special relationship. So the Steelers have to be good for that rivalry really to make something happen. So the Steelers, they went out and they signed linebacker Patrick Queen, free agent, who really had kind of came into his own, especially with the addition of Roquan Smith at Baltimore, allowed Queen to use what he does best, which is his speed. And now he's going to go to a Pittsburgh team. I'm really happy for Patrick to get a big big contract. He put in a lot of work. He had a lot of negative stuff coming out of his freshman year in Baltimore. So I'm happy for him to be getting that money. I'm glad to see him in that black and yellow. Pittsburgh made that move there. Pittsburgh also had, interestingly, they ditched 3 quarterbacks. They had, this is a team that Tomlin hasn't had a losing season ever. They ditched Pickett, Mason Rudolph, and Trubisky, and they picked up 2 quarterbacks that really under fire: Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. And Fields, everyone thought was going to go for a first rounder, second rounder, but the market fell. And now the Steelers have really, they have this running back quarterback. Really, like, what can they do? And I think what's funny, they signed as their offense coordinator Arthur Smith, who came from the Falcons. And as you know, the Falcons the last couple of years, with all the talent they had to catch the ball, did none of it. And all the talent last year to run the ball, they didn't get it to the running back. So we'll see what Arthur Smith can do. And they lost Deontay Johnson. So they lost Deontay Johnson. They have new quarterbacks. We'll see. This is an interesting Steelers team this year. I think it's a transition year. I think it's going to be a fun offense to see how funky it gets. So that's what's going on in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that's just real quick before you go on to the next team. I think it's going to change everything in terms of their offense. And Cordarrelle Patterson was brought up for the new kind of kickoff returns that they're going to try out this year, which will be fun. And Arthur Smith, man, look, I know the passing was horrible in Atlanta, but it couldn't get much worse than it was last year in Pittsburgh. So he's got a low bar to start with.
Yeah,
and he can come up with some cool running quarterback kind of plays, and we'll see how long the backup quarterback stays the backup quarterback there. See how long Russell Wilson can hold on to it. Who you got next?
I got next the Bengals, which I think the big thing with the Bengals is they don't have a big free agent signing in terms of offense. They picked up Zach Moss, who is, going to replace Joe Mixon, who they traded the Texans. So the running game for the Bengals is going to be really kind of iffy. I mean, that was Zach Moss isn't game changing, but and Mixon was there for a long time. But they did, another team that took out from the #1 defense last year, the Baltimore Ravens. They took Geno Stone, who I think had 7 picks. So he goes to that Bengals team. But I really don't see a lot happening with the Bengals this year. I mean, they signed from Tennessee Chidobe Awuzie, 2 years, 3 years, 36. They did get a right tackle, defensive tackle, Jonah Williams, DJ Reader, but I really don't see a lot happening in this team. So I guess what they're looking for is, can they get better in the draft? Look, they already have a good quarterback in Burrows. They got a solid receiving team. I think it's a transition year for Cincinnati to see, like, can they maybe outscore some teams this year with Burrows? But Burrows has to get better, right? He has to get better, not in terms of his play, but better to be on the field. And that's 2 seasons now. He's missed some significant time.
He's got to stay healthy for sure. And Zach Moss looked good in spot duty in Indianapolis last year. We'll see if he can carry the load. And I think they also picked up, I'm looking, Sheldon Rankins, big 29-year-old defensive tackle from Houston. So they focused on a little bit of defense, and their offense is fine if Burrows, can stay healthy, like you said,
Yeah, for sure. The next team we're going to look at, we're saving the best for last year, Cleveland Browns. I think their biggest loss is in losing Joe Flacco. I mean, that guy, he's the kind of guy that, like, when those rookies come up and say, "Hey, mister, can you buy me some beer?" He's the guy that goes in and gets those guys who are 20 years old. He shows up, brings back the 6-pack of Milwaukee's best, and hangs out with the youngins. But just, all kidding aside, like, Joe Flacco goes back to the poolside. They lost defensive tackle Jordan Elliott, who went to San Francisco, who we'll talk about their defensive woes in a bit. But they did bring on Jameis Winston, which I think is interesting to see what happens there quarterback-wise. Dante Foreman, Nyheim Hines, and they traded for Jerry Jeudy from the Broncos. So they've got a lot of offense that they brought in. So we'll see if they get any better. I mean, the big thing there, they have a quarterback who has been out of the league for 2 years, got injured last year. So really, we'll see what happens. I think it's, again, another transition year for them. I just don't see a lot happening in that team from a big upside.
No big splashes. Jameis is a big addition. The guy can throw it 70 yards, but and they also, it looks like they signed, you may have said this, I'm sorry if I missed it, but Snoop Huntley from Baltimore as your third quarterback there. So that's kind of fun, But nothing huge. They gave it looks like 10 different 1-year kind of low money contracts just to fill out the roster and see who sticks in training camp, but nothing big and splashy here. What you got for Baltimore?
So Baltimore, they went out and they picked up sort of an unknown running back, kind of under the radar guy named Derrick Henry. Just kidding. I mean, this guy's named the King. He leads the league in touches almost every year. The year he didn't, he was on pace to do it. I mean, this is going to be really interesting to see what happens with the running game and that sort of the RPO when Lamar can take that ball, keep it, give it to Derrick Henry. They have 2 good tight ends. We'll see what happens there. But that's a big pickup for them. Now, they did lose a lot in their defense, right? Baltimore lost Geno Stone. I said before, they lost Patrick Queen. So they do have a couple linebackers who Ojabo and Odabe Owe. 2 guys that should step up next year, so we'll see what happens. But I will say this, and this is kind of like the whole 3 of the 4 teams in this division. Well, let me finish up with Baltimore before I go to this. But I think Baltimore is really looking at, they had a top-rated defense last year. I think they scored lots of points, but I think this year they want to have a little more diversity in their offense. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I think they lost, and of course they did lose their defensive coordinator. I mean, I think it's a big thing. The defensive coordinator is now in Seattle. So that's a big loss. When you lose someone who was a coordinator, is now gone, that's going to be a big loss. So we'll see what happens there.
And let me just add on. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of the Ravens. They're kind of like, my second favorite, type of team just because I'm in the region. But I think they're going to miss Jadeveon Clowney, man, because I think he set the edge so well. I know he was a late pickup last year, but
Yeah.
he did great for them. And then cornerback Ronald Darby, goes to Jacksonville, and Gus the Bus goes to San Diego. So it's going to be a whole new feel in Baltimore, man.
Yeah, for sure. And I think the point here is that these three of the four teams here, the Ravens, the Bengals, and the Browns, all have quarterbacks on big money deals.
Yeah.
And when you have quarterbacks on big money deals, you've got to let some things go. They would have loved to sign Jadeveon Clowney, but I mean, his roster, I think it was $1 million deal last year, $2 million, it was super cheap.
Yeah, and now he's just signed for $20 million.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where you do these deals and hopefully it works out that you can get a short-term 1-2 year deal and that guy can turn on and make one more big contract. So good for Jadeveon Clowney. I'm happy for him. Same the way I have your Patrick Queen. But yeah, I mean Baltimore's going to be a fun team to watch. I think they're going to have that run game is just going to be just very fun to watch. I think at the very least.
Yeah.
They've had a lot of different running backs. They haven't had that stud running back since they had the guy out of New Orleans. I'm drawing a blank on his name. I'll get it. The guy who went to Alabama.
Running back. He's in New Orleans now.
Mark Ingram.
Oh, yeah.
He was like the every down back they had, but they haven't had that really since. I mean, they had Gus Edwards, but he was always, hurt or not. J.K. Dobbins, like that guy needs a physical therapist. So we'll see. But anyway, the division's going to be really fun. I'm looking forward to seeing this division this year. But again, the big splash to kind of summarize, I feel like it's Derrick Henry, obviously in Baltimore. But across the board, I mean, Steelers influx quarterbacks, Browns, nothing too splashy. And the Bengals just need to get healthy, right? So
yeah, I think the Ravens are still going to be kind of sitting atop that division. Pittsburgh's always dangerous. I mean, the whole division's dangerous. But I still believe in Baltimore, man. And really, the running back I was thinking of when you said the last really solid running back for the Ravens was Jamal Lewis, in the breaking through 2,000 yards. But that's the kind of thing that Derrick Henry, I think he's got one good year left in the tank, man. They get some good blocking for him with Lamar at threat. I mean, if he stays healthy, it could be special. So, all right, good stuff, man. I'll move us on to another division in the AFC. Let's do the AFC East because there's a lot of fun stuff going on in the East, man. We'll start with Buffalo. Buffalo's an interesting situation to me because they lost a lot on defense, and maybe they needed to because there's a lot of expensive older guys there that are no longer there, and maybe it's going to end up being a good thing. But they lost guys like Jordan Poyer, names that you recognize as being kind of stalwarts on their defense. Leonard Floyd's gone. Jordan Poyer, like I said, guys they're leaving. Tre'Davious White is gone.
Yeah.
And so, but they have to let these guys go, and these guys are going to other teams and signing probably for too much money based on their age and stuff. And then on offense, their big losses are at receiver, and so the guys that you're used to hearing about in Buffalo, like Gabe Davis, and
Stephon Diggs.
And Stephon Diggs that just left. I mean, that's huge, and that's a huge hole for them that they're going to have to fill probably through the draft because there's not a whole lot left out there. Now they did sign Curtis Samuel from Washington, which is helpful to stop the bleeding, but I think we saw in Washington he's really kind of barely a number 2 at this point, kind of a slot guy. So they need some guys at receiver. So I think Buffalo takes a step back. I think they're a good organization. They're going to hang in there, but I think they're not going to win it this year. I think they've taken a step back based on free agency. So, and so if we look at the teams that I'm excited about that have made a lot of moves in that division, 2 of them stand out to me, Miami and the New York Jets. So let's talk about the Jets real quick. I like what they've done, man. They have really bolstered their offensive line, which is huge. So just give me a second here. I'm going to pull them up. The Jets sign their Okay, so on offensive line, they signed Tyron Smith, future Hall of Famer from Dallas. He's a little bit older, but if he can stay healthy, I think he's still one of the best solid, most solid left tackles in the league. He is 33 years old, but they really needed a tackle. And they signed guard Jake Hansen. They re-signed him to a contract. And a big signing from Baltimore, John Simpson, who is a very
Simpson, yep.
steady guard, 12 million a year. And so they're really working on their offensive line. The other thing that I'm excited about that the Jets have done is I really wanted Baltimore to sign Big Mike Williams from San Diego because he was one of the better wide receivers that was still lingering out there on the market. And I was like, that would be great for Baltimore. Big guy. No one bodies out like Big Mike when he's healthy. But the Jets signed him, and I think that's a great move for them because if they can pick up a receiver in the draft, one of these top 3 or 4 receivers, they're going to have a great receiving core. They bolster that line. Their offense is nice, man. Just for fun, they signed Tyrod Taylor as their backup, which was they needed a backup. I mean, that's the whole reason their season fell apart last year up in New York.
Yeah.
That Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, and I think Tyrod Taylor's one of the better backup quarterbacks in the league because he's seen so much at 34 years old. So I like the Jets, man. I really do. I think they've made some nice moves. They got Javon Kinlaw on the defensive line from San Francisco, and they already had a really nice defense. So we'll see how they do, man. If they can stay healthy, I think the Jets are a sneaky sleeper.
Yeah. Which would take, there's Aaron Rodgers, give him some fantasy potential, right? Breece Hall, maybe a little bit less keying on him this year. So these signings that we think about, it's like we look at the signings of like Mike Williams, and maybe he's not a guy that has a great fantasy year, but he frees other space for other people. Like the same thing going back to like that Baltimore side is like think about Derrick Henry might not have a great year, but if that means Lamar Jackson doesn't have to take as many, maybe Lamar Jackson's stats drop on the running because he's handing off to Derrick Henry. So maybe it's like fantasy implications are like, yeah, they're fun to watch, but then what happens with the numbers that we care about, right?
Right.
Is Lamar going to have 1,000-yard season if Derrick Henry has 1,000-yard season, right? Is Breece Hall going to have maybe 7 guys in the box and not 10 because other receivers are out there? Like will Aaron Rodgers will he be in the fourth quarter on a 35-0 game? Does Taylor get some mop-up duty, right? So and take away numbers from Aaron Rodgers. So all these things the implications of this are just more than like, hey, this is cool for the team, but what's it really mean for your when you're drafting a player in this? I think it's really interesting on that part of it too.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. If Aaron Rodgers can stay healthy this year, I think he's kind of a sneaky good fantasy pick. If you want to do that strategy where you kind of wait for a late round quarterback kind of strategy, he'd be great. And we'll see how he looks, over the summer and stuff. But he's going to have a nice offense, man. But now Miami, speaking of nice offenses, Miami didn't have to do too much in free agency to bolster their offense. Their offense is humming and they're ready to go. They did sign tight end Jonnu Smith from Atlanta, solid guy, above average tight end. Always been real consistent. He's only 28 years old. I feel like he's been in the league for forever, but still young. I think that's a great move for them. But what Miami really did is they focused on defense. They get Jordan Brooks, linebacker from Seattle. They get Kendall Fuller, cornerback from Washington. They get Shaq Barrett at outside linebacker from Tampa Bay. They get Jordan Poyer from Buffalo to give some leadership on the back end. They get another safety from Buffalo, Saron Neal. So they really, I think they knew that one of their weaknesses from last year, if they want to get over that hump, they want to win the AFC East, they got to focus on defense. And I think they did a really nice job filling out the roster and getting stronger there. Only other offensive things kind of bolstered the line. They got Aaron Brewer, who's a really nice center from Tennessee. He's only 26 years old. They gave him 21 mil on a 3-year contract. And so, I like what Miami's done. I kind of put them at the top of this division. I put them above Buffalo. I put them above New York just because New York's New York. They always seem to find a way to kind of implode. And until they prove it, I'm putting Miami at the head of the division. I like what they've done. I think they've done the most in the East. And I can't forget about the Patriots before we move on to there. Any thoughts on Miami?
I think Miami. I mean, they lost Christian Wilkinson. They lost him. I think that's a big hole in the middle. They did also
Yep.
lose that I forget the linebacker's name who blew out his Achilles in like week 14.
Van Ginkel.
Yeah, I mean that's a tough loss. It just happens. But I mean, I think the biggest thing is that um, I think that this is the year they had to sign the extension with Tua, right?
Yeah.
So by I think Tua by staying healthy the whole year, I think showed he can be that player. That 1 year fluke of multiple concussions might be just hopefully a fluke. But they have the most consistent offense. They have a really smart offensive head coach. So again, in the fantasy world, any of those players are going to do well. The flip side is the running backs are a little old. So we'll see what happens on the running back side. But I think that look, if you're drafting a team, when you have Tyreek Hill as in the top 5, you're gonna be fine. I mean, this guy, if you follow his Instagram, do it. This guy is a workout fiend. He's just all about the speed. That's why they call him a cheetah. So I think you won't go wrong with taking any player from Miami's offense.
No, that's an offense you want. And they're Achan at running back. I think he's gonna just keep getting worked in, man, and he's gonna be an exciting kind of, I don't know, 3rd or 4th round fantasy pick. We'll see
Yeah.
what happens, man.
Well, yeah, I meant besides HN. I meant like they have Mostert.
Yeah.
Mostert is like 34 now, and he's been with 7 teams. I'm not sure if he's going to come back, but it's also a lot of work. That's a lot of work for HN to get in there if he's going to be the
yeah. I mean, he's a little undersized to be the bell cow, but you're right. So they're going to have to keep mixing it up and keep people fresh. But HN's exciting though, isn't he?
Yeah, yep, yeah, for sure.
All right, New England, my least favorite in this division. Kind of boring. I don't really know what they're doing. I feel like this is a franchise that's kind of struggling from the top all the way down to the bottom. Their signings are Antonio Gibson at running back from Washington, Jacoby Brissett, which I think is a really nice kind of steady quarterback too. They got KJ Osborne, kind of a 3rd, 4th receiver from Minnesota, and Austin Hooper at tight end. But these are kind of nothing really that exciting, nothing that splashy. And then they re-signed some guys that are kind of along the same lines, like Kendrick Bourne, and no one that really jumps out to you. They really need a quarterback in the draft, and so everyone's talking about that number 3 pick. Who's it going to be? Whether it's the kid from North Carolina, Derek May potentially. Looks like Washington may be going with quarterback from LSU. But they have to draft the first quarterback that falls to them, and that's just a must. And so we'll see how it goes, man. I find this team, I got to be honest with you, a little bit boring.
Yeah, I mean, Antonio is not Antonio Pierce, the new head coach who's there, who basically had the deal to become the head coach. So they didn't have to like do any of the interviews. But I don't see. Yeah, I feel like there's no direction just yet. So maybe this is a year that they find some direction, and maybe it's the head coach. It's just he's there while they get a couple crappy years, and they get some picks, and then they turn it around in 2 years. So, but when we do fantasy draft later, I think we won't have anybody from New England in the first 3 rounds. I really don't see from receiver, from quarterback. I don't see anybody in the top 3 rounds on this team.
No, this is a team like that I would just kind of mark off on my fantasy list, like just stay away. And we've talked about this a lot. It's just that you really want the guys on teams with great offenses, man. You know what I mean? Like even the 3rd or 4th guy on the offense, you want him if it's a great offense. If it's a crappy offense, avoid it like the plague if you can. You know what I mean? So yeah.
A wide receiver 1 on a number 30 team is not worth anything.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Even who they have last year at running back that I thought, if they just can get the running game going in New England, but it just never happened, man. Yeah. And there's a couple teams like that in the league, obviously, but they're one of them now. It's quite a turnaround from the past 20 years, but it's a cycle of life, man. But all right, what division you want to talk about now, Graham? I'm gonna let you take the lead.
Let's go to the NFC West. Let's make a little jump across the coast.
You want the NFC West or the AFC West?
NFC West,
Okay,
49ers
all right.
and Seahawks, Cardinals.
Yeah.
So let's go to the Super Bowl runner-up. San Francisco 49ers featured prominently in your background there. We're going to jump into that first. So, for them, I think the big thing is, they lost Chase Young. They lost Eric Armstead, two defensive ends, but they brought in Leonard Floyd from the Bills. They brought a defensive end and defensive tackle, Utor Gross, and Jordan Elliott they brought in. So they did sort of replace some defense across the board. Sam Darnold, backup quarterback, is gone. I guess when I look at this team, I'm looking at, defense seems to be, they've lost some players here, lost some names, but they really haven't done anything to spice up their offense.
Right.
And they got rid of the backup quarterback that I think is helpful when I don't think that Brock Purdy is, he's good. I just don't see him being that wow factor compared to the rest of their wow factor on offense. When you think about who they have running the ball, catching the ball, I feel like they could need something more dynamic from that quarterback position.
Careful, man. You're going to upset a lot of people out there.
I know.
There's some Purdy believers out there.
There's some Purdy believers. But what I'm saying is, in comparison to their talents, if we look at with Debo and with Ayuk and with, of course, McCaffrey, that is elite level talent, and the quarterback does not match that, right? Yeah. Usually, compared to Mahomes in Kansas City, it's elite level at the quarterback, close to very elite at the tight end, and then a bunch of no names and up and comers. So that's sort of my point there is, I think that you need to have some dynamic ability in the quarterback position. For those Brock Purdy people who are going to come at me, bro, on Twitter.
I think this is an interesting team because usually you get a rookie kind of quarterback or a guy within his first, he hasn't had his first big contract yet. And you're usually not struggling as much as San Fran is with their salary cap. And there's talks that they're not going to be able to sign Brandon Ayuk to a long-term deal because they've got so much money spent in so many other of these star players, both on defense and offense. And, as a Washington fan, I'm just like, give them whatever they want, man, because that guy is special. You want a first-round pick for Brandon Ayuk? Let's give him the first-round pick, man, because I like him better than Debo. I think Debo's kind of a niche player. He's got his special qualities, but Ayuk's gotten better every single year. He's a great receiver, man.
Yeah. But they lost. They just also signed a tight end, Charlie Warner from Atlanta, 3 years.
Oh, that's right.
So what does that look like for George Kittle? I don't know enough about Charlie Warner to know, like, is he more the blocking tight end or more receiver? I just don't know. But they spent 3 years, 45 for Eric Armstead, the Jacksonville defensive end. Sorry, they lost Eric. Sorry, they lost Eric Armstead. They lost Chase Young. They lost Charlie Warner. My bad. I messed that up.
Oh, right. Warner went to Atlanta.
Went to Atlanta. Yep. Sorry. So that's sort of what I look at. Like, they're I'm looking at the other screen here, who they kind of signed. They signed as the defensive players there, but we'll see with them.
They lost a lot on defense, man. They really did.
Yeah.
I know Chase Young was kind of a 1 year kind of test, but Cleveland Farrell, Eric Armstead, Chase Young. These are, Javon Kinlaw. That's a lot of big names on the defensive line. I know that they're trying to replace it, but it's tough when you're at the top, man, because everyone wants your players, everyone wants your coaches. They lose a defensive coordinator every year, it seems like. But keep going.
So we'll go to the Rams next. I think the Rams are interesting because, again, it's the team that their big loss is Aaron Donald, who retired, right? This guy's a Hall of Famer, first ballot. Just what an amazing player he was. Losing him, but then they signed an offensive guard, a tight end. So maybe the Rams are thinking, you know what? Stafford's getting a little old, right? We got the right team? Yes. Right?
Yeah.
Do we protect him more, right? So do we have, Detroit, they got Joe Jackson from Detroit, Kevin Dotson from Pittsburgh, maybe they're going to try to get some help there. We'll see, right? I think that's a big part. They did also sign Jimmy G, so he's gonna be in LA where he should be.
It's
Just
perfect for Jimmy G, man.
yeah, man.
He
I
can
mean,
chill out on the beach, have
yeah,
some, mimosas with some young hotties on Sunday
yeah,
morning after church. It'll be great for him.
yeah. Nothing's better than being a backup quarterback in a major city. So Jimmy G is gonna be just fine with that one. So I think, but again, the Rams. I mean, like to me, I don't really see. I don't see a lot of splash with their team
Yeah,
this year. So it's like they've got a good head coach, they've got a good
yeah.
quarterback, but really, what are they doing? The rest of their team. I just don't know what they're gonna do.
Yeah, I think this is a team that, like, again, the big money into the quarterback, so they got to be a little bit careful. Their big signing was the Jonah Jackson, the guard signing. I mean, 51 mil for a guard. He's one of the better guards in the league. He's only 27. They stole him from Detroit. I think those kind of signings, when you're already a decent team, you already have a decent offense, just kind of bolstering that line. You got to keep your older quarterback because when he's upright, he can spin it like no one else, man. So that was good for them. And
Yeah,
then I got to throw a little love to the Cameron Curl signing, who was just and kind of under the radar safety for Washington. He got a little bit more money than Washington was willing to give him, but he's a good player at strong safety. He's only 24 years old right now. I'm a little bitter about that loss because I really liked him as a player, and so that's like one of those, him and Tre'Davious White from Buffalo at cornerback. Like they're doing these little things just to kind of bolster things, and that's maybe all they need because you got to love their offense. I mean, it's great.
I mean, Puka is going into his age 23 season. Kyron Williams going to his age
Tyron,
24 season.
what a great find that was.
Tutu Atwell going his age 25 season. And Cooper Kupp, who had a couple had a weird year, right? I mean, 59 receptions. He's 30 going in his 31 year age year, but like an off season of recovery, an off season of health, doesn't have to do as much. Maybe he's one of those guys you pick up in like a fourth round, thinking,
Yeah.
oh yeah, Cooper Kupp, he's 30 when he's done, but he has one more good year in him, right? So I think that's
Oh
gonna
yeah.
be what happens.
Yeah, I think the injuries, unfortunately, it kind of derailed him last year. But 31's not. It's not like he's 36. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like he can still do it at 31 and stay healthy. I mean, I think of guys like Steve Smith, where the Baltimore signed him from
yeah,
Carolina. He was like 35 and he went off. So it's like you still got time at 31. And
yeah,
um
yeah, yeah.
yeah, Keenan Allen last year for San Diego was like 32 and had an amazing year. So yeah, I think he could be. I think their offense is going to be great again.
Yeah. So then let's go into Seattle. Seattle, I saw, basically they lost or they signed tight end Noah Fant. They signed Sam Howell, which I think is a really interesting signing when you think
Yeah.
about they're Gino is there as the quarterback, but is Sam Howell, who is a gunslinger.
Yeah.
What happens if Seattle starts off like 0-3? Do they make a change? Does Sam Howell come in there and do a little damage, right? So I think
Yeah.
that
And Seattle's got a new coaching staff this year. And so it's like those old loyalties, may not be there like they were,
yeah, yeah. So that's interesting. We'll see what happens with Geno Smith. Geno Smith is 34 years old. Like you said, they did sign their head coach was the former defensive coordinator for the Ravens. So we'll see what happens
Yeah.
there. In terms of like key losses, and looking through here, I didn't see anything that was like too like
Major. Jordan Brooks, linebacker Jordan Brooks. That was the big
Jordan
one.
Brooks, Miami. Yeah, that's what I had. Yeah, Jordan Brooks was there. Will Disley went to the Chargers. Bobby Wagner, he went to Washington on a
Yep.
one-year deal. And
Yep.
yeah, but I mean, like, and Damian Lewis, their guard, went to Carolina. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
I think the linebackers, losing those two linebackers. I mean, I know Bobby Wagner. They needed to let him go. Probably he's probably a future Hall of Famer, but he's 33. Although he did lead the league in tackling last year, I think. So it's not like he's done. But at some point you got to kind of cut him loose. But losing Jordan Brooks and Bobby Wagner is going to kind of change the complexion of that defense a little bit.
Yep.
But Seattle's such a good organization, man. You know, they're going to find a way, and they got a great defensive-minded head coach now, so I think they'll
Yeah.
be okay.
Yeah, I mean, look, they still have, they've got Ty Lockett, they got DK Metcalf, they got Jackson Smith and Jigba. I mean, they've got some receiving out there.
Yep.
Kenneth Walker has had, he almost put up 1,000 yards last year.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think
And
offensively,
Charbonnet, my guy Charbonnet's there too.
yeah, yep, Zach Charbonnet, yep. So they've got, I think they're going to be fine scoring the ball. We'll see what happens again in that defense as it gets revamped. So let's go into the Cardinals, right? The Arizona Cardinals. Again, so this is the team I looked at here. So their key loss was Hollywood Brown, a diminutive receiver, good hands. He is now at Kansas City, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the Cardinals sign a defensive tackle, a quarterback, a linebacker, all on, so 3 defensive players, all on 3-year deals. So to me, when I look at this, I'm like, okay, what are the Cardinals? Are they thinking they're not going to score the ball next year? Are they thinking, you know what, we need to transition to a more off or defensive minded team? I'm not sure, but when you make those big signings of 3 defensive players on 3-year deals, it's like, what are they thinking about? So
yeah, and
they have Kyler Murray coming back, right? So
yeah, they've got, yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I'm kind of reading along. It's not just those 3. They gave 5 guys. Now I don't know, they got a guy named Mac Wilson, linebacker from New England, on a 3-year deal. They got a guy named Bilal Nichols, and so they're really looking to give these guys some longer term defensive deals. And I think that has been a point of weakness for them that they want to address. But really, they have needs all across the board in Arizona. I mean, this is a team that's kind of in transition, and their new coach from last year, I think, did a really good job with what he had to work with. Quarterback was injured all year, but they have needs all across the board.
Yeah, I mean, their team they went 4-13. I mean, Kyler Murray played 8 games. Josh Dobbs played 8 games. James Conner, does he have anything? He's 29 now. Is there anything in the tank? I mean, their tight end led them and catch Trey McBride. Marquise Brown's gone. Rondell Moore. He's gonna be 24. Maybe he's the guy that takes a little bit of a leap. We'll see about, this is a team that I would not draft anybody from their offense. Not in the first 3 rounds. I mean, once you get to round 5, 6, you're slim pickings anyway. For top level talent. But I think that this team I would just stay away from. And I think it's gonna be this team is gonna be a waiver wire pickups. I feel it's one of those things where, hey, I didn't know that like Trey McBride, that he had that in him. Look at that leap he's gonna do at 25 years old. I didn't know he had 81 catches, 825 yards. Maybe he has a bit of a leap, right?
Yeah.
So
and Arizona is interesting in the actual real NFL drafts coming up later this month, because I think they're sitting at like somewhere around pick 4 or 5. And so they're going to get a lot of trade offers to those teams, those needy quarterback teams, like that are going to want to move up, whether it's Las Vegas or New York Giants. And they're going to have to decide, do we want a kind of second-tier college quarterback who could be good, or do we want to fill out that roster and give up that pick? So it's going to be fun to watch them in the draft too, because they got a lot of holes they need to fill up here, man.
Yep. All right, well, it's on to you now. We're halfway done the league.
All right. Let's do the NFC South. Always kind of an interesting division. It's always like, the winner goes at like 9 wins to the playoffs and then like causes some trouble. But
not this year.
I mean, it's let's be honest, like before I even jump into it, for me, it's Tampa Bay and Atlanta that are going to be battling it out for the contention here. I think New Orleans and Carolina are towards the bottom, but let's talk about it. We'll start with the guys towards the bottom. Carolina, complete mess. Their owner reminds me of Dan Snyder in Washington in terms of just ruining the team, man. And it's a shame. Carolina, if you look at their signings, ridiculous, dude. Just poor decision making. They give a guard that they get from Miami, Robert Hunt. Okay, he's a good player. He's a good guard. They give him $100 million 5-year deal on a guard, bro. You know, it's like Carolina. I know you got the rookie quarterback, you got money to spend, but you don't have to spend that much on a guard, man. Remember when $100 million deal was going towards like the best players in the league, and they're giving it to a guard? And then they signed another guard from Seattle, Damian Lewis. They gave him a 4-year deal, $53 million deal. And then they signed 2 defensive ends. They picked up Jadeveon Clowney. They were like, look, Clowney, you had a good year in Baltimore. Your career was almost over, but we're going to decide to give you $20 million because you set the edge well in Baltimore last year on a 2-year deal. You know, Jadeveon's thinking this is like a coup. Ashawn Robinson, defensive end from the New York Giants, they give him a 3-year deal, $22 million. Now, let's be honest. Is Ashawn Robinson a big name on the tip of our tongues over dinner? No. He's one of those rotational ends from New York, you know? And it's
Yeah.
so, and they give Josie Jewell, who is a linebacker out of Denver. They give him a 3-year deal, $18 million. And so they're just, I don't know, the decision making here for these guys that are kind of above average players, maybe, way too much money, man. And I just think the organization right now is just making some poor decisions.
I mean, it's just it screams like lack of direction. I mean, especially when they made the trade when they traded the guy to New York. I forget who it was. They made their top player and got barely anything for him. I mean, it's pathetic when they do this. I mean, just I know you have a salary cap, but don't spend it all on 2 players.
Yeah, and I think some of their losses are going to hurt them. I was really happy with that Washington picked up Jeremy Chin at safety from them. I know he's had a down year. He blames it on kind of defensive scheming. And they pick up Frankie Louvu. Washington picks up Frankie Louvu from Carolina. So those are 2 huge losses on their defense. The one thing, and then Shaq Griffin at cornerback leaves. He goes to Minnesota. Gross Matos at defensive end leaves. He goes to San Fran, as you mentioned earlier. So I don't think Carolina's gotten better. Maybe they've bolstered their offensive line, which they needed for their young quarterback. But man, they need some offensive firepower and some speed on that offense. Man, they need some receivers. So we'll see what they do in the draft. But not a team I'm impressed with. The only team that I could be maybe less impressed with what they've done in the offseason is New Orleans. That's another team that's kind of head scratching for me. They lose Jameis Winston, as we talked about earlier. But they sign in New Orleans. They get Chase Young. That was kind of their big splash. He'll be 25 coming into this year. But I think that if Chase Young can't do it in San Francisco, when he leaves disgruntled from Washington, he's on a 1-year deal in San Fran with all the talent on that defensive line. If he can't do it there is no way in hell he's doing anything in New Orleans. And then really, as I look down the list of other people they've signed, the 4th wide receiver out of Miami, Cedric Wilson, was their second biggest kind of, offensive pickup. And the rest of the guys are just like, Nathan Peterman, backup quarterback from Chicago. Nathan Peterman did.
Yeah, if you can't play in front of Justin Fields, how good are you? I mean, no offense to Justin Fields.
Yeah,
but
this is a team, like if I was a fan of New Orleans right now, I'd be very concerned. And so yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say about them. I'm not impressed with anything they've done. It's not a team I'd want to root for. Both of them, I think, in Carolina are going to be lucky to get over the 5-win hump this year.
And this is why you said before, this is the division that usually gets like 9 wins and you're in. This is why I think this division is going to have a 12-win team. It's because 4 wins are going to be just handed to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll get to that in a minute.
That's a good point. I think that the power shift is happening. I think it goes to Tampa Bay and Atlanta. I'm going to save Atlanta for the end, because that's kind of I think there's like maybe 4 or 5 teams in the whole of the NFL that have kind of excited me with some of the moves they've made. And Atlanta's one of them. But we'll talk about Tampa Bay real quick. Tampa Bay focuses really on defense. In this offseason, they signed Jordan Whitehead, a strong safety from the Jets, who's a really good player, 2-year deal, $9 million. They re-signed Levante David, which was important for them. They get Randy Gregory at outside linebacker, a defensive end from San Francisco, another San Francisco defensive end loss. And then Chase Edmonds, kind of just, to solidify that third down running back spot. They re-signed him. And so I think they've made some nice kind of bolstering moves on defense and re-signing the guys that they really need to sign to re-sign. And their offense, I think, is fine. Those receivers stay healthy. They're not showing any signs of slowing down. They're getting a little bit older, but I think the offense is great. Our quarterback goes down there and rekindles his whole career, signs a big new contract. Baker, I mean, if he can do that again, man, maybe this is the place where he settles down and finishes his career, because his year last year was great. They do lose some guys that are kind of bigger names than Shaq Barrett and Devin White. But quite frankly, Shaq Barrett was getting older. He goes to Miami, and Devin White wasn't playing that great the last couple of years. So I don't know that that's going to be a huge loss for them. I like Tampa Bay. They won the division last year. I think they're going to be contending for it this year. But I think Atlanta's probably moved past them, and we can talk about them in a second. Any thoughts on Tampa Bay?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the gamble you make with, I think, with top first round picks is if you get a first round pick and you can sign him for something cheap and let him revive his career, it can pay off. And you can look at that with Baltimore, Jadeveon Clowney, who former number one pick, had a good year, signed a big contract. And you look at Baker, first rounder, comes out, signed for a cheap deal, and now they have a quarterback. So the pedigree of a first round pick, especially number one pick, that pedigree, you can get them when they've kind of slipped and they've leveled out, and maybe they can bounce back and get one more big paycheck. I think it's always worth taking that risk if you're a team. But the other thing is you have to have a good organization, right? I mean, you don't do that if you're the Carolina Panthers. I think, we'll see what happens. Like Tampa Bay seems to have their stuff together. Of course, Baltimore does. So we'll see. But I think that the challenge here, I think, for Tampa Bay this year is going to be Mike Evans is going to 31. So compare Mike Evans to Cooper Kupp. This would be, you had to look at two players, 30 years old, 1,000-yard receiver type players, lots of receptions, lots of touchdowns. Flip a coin. If you're drafting and you can't get Cooper Kupp, Mike Evans is a good number two guy. So when you look at some of these guys in the draft, look at their history, look at their age, and then of course look at their situation. Right? I think that both are in very similar situations. I would compare Purdy to Baker Mayfield in the fact that they're very similar in their makeup and how they're built. So we'll see how that plays out in the team. So
and Mike Evans, 10 years in a row over 1,000 yards. He's consistently good. He's consistently healthy. They have a nice team. They have a nice offense, and I expect them to do well. However, Atlanta Falcons, baby. New coach, Raheem Morris moves in. I think it's his second bite at the head coaching apple. And he's set up, man. He's set up on offense. Just here was their offense, okay? They dropped Bijan Robinson last year. They had Tyler Algier the year before. Two great running backs. I mean, I get excited just thinking about this offense. They dropped Drake London, great young receiver, and they have Kyle Pitts at tight end. And so who do they sign to kind of bolster? What was the Atlanta Falcons really lacking last year? A quarterback. They get Kirk Cousins in. All right. Now, Kirk Cousins, he's coming off the Achilles, but I think he's got plenty of time. He's a hard worker, man. He's going to focus on rehab and doing it the right way. This guy is a football player, former third-round pick of Washington, goes to Minnesota, lights it up. Washington didn't want to give him that huge contract. This guy's gotten paid over and over again. He gets another big contract from Atlanta. They finally have a guy that can just spin the rock. Now, Kirk's great for fantasy. He's, the knock on him is he can't win the big one in the playoffs. But in terms of fantasy points, he's been consistently good everywhere he goes. Constantly it's in the top 10 in fantasy. So he's going to be throwing it to Drake. And they signed from Chicago just to add a little speed, Darnell Mooney. That guy's a great number 2 deep threat receiver. He's got good size, great hands, and I think Kirk's going to love him there, man. And you pair up Mooney with what they already had there, with Kirk Cousins, with that great running game, with that great tight end and Kyle Pitts. Can Kyle Pitts finally do it, please? Now that he's got a legit quarterback, can we see the Kyle Pitts we all fell in love with when he came out of college? I'm excited about the Falcons, man. I think they're going to win the division. I think that's an offense that I finally want a piece of because they finally have a very steady hand at quarterback now, which they have not had in really since Matty Ice was healthy, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited about that offense, man.
Yeah, I think the thing with Atlanta, I want to do some number crunching, but I would say for those stat geeks out there, go look at Kirk Cousins' tight end targets, right? I don't know what they are, but that's definitely something to look at because he has a wide receiver in Kyle Pitts, and he was totally underutilized, and I want to see what that numbers look like. Is Kirk hitting that tight end on a regular basis?
Well, I think he is because you remember when TJ Hawkinson couldn't really get it going in Detroit. He goes to Minnesota and he has that great year. Like I think Kirk can do it, man, because he really made TJ Hawkinson hit the top 5 tight end.
Yeah.
When he couldn't do that in Detroit, even with Stafford there, because I think he was a rookie Stafford's last year there. Yeah, exciting times for Atlanta, man. I'm excited to watch them play.
Well, the big thing I think, again, like you said last year, what was Atlanta missing? Like a quarterback and an offensive coordinator. I mean, it just was horrendous to watch them play with that much talent and just not getting the players that they have get them the ball. So exciting for them. And we'll see what happens. And again, let's not forget that Atlanta did not offer Lamar Jackson the contract last offseason. And that would have been just, I'm a Ravens fan. I love my Ravens. That would have been fun to watch.
Yeah, it would have been cool, man. It would have been cool. And I think that the Falcons, because Raheem Morris is known more, I think, for defense, but they signed a guy from LA, from that Shanahan kind of tree, guy Zach Robinson, to run their offense. So go Falcons, man. I'm not a huge fan inherently, but I think I will be this year.
Yeah. So in other words, people, draft somebody from that offensive, right? Please.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. I may. But yeah, so that's the NFC South. I see Atlanta at the top, Tampa Bay fighting for contention, and obviously New Orleans and Carolina not doing a whole lot. Who you want to hit next, man? Which division?
Well, let's go to the NFC North. That's my last one. No, I have 2 more, right? Got 2 more to go. Right? We got to hit the AFC West and NFC North, right?
Yeah, you got to hit the NFC North, man, and then you're done.
Yeah. No, I have the AFC West, right? Or do you have that?
Oh, yeah, you do. You have the AFC West. Yep, you got that one.
Let's do that one next then.
All right, good.
All right, so let's go with the Chargers. Let's go with the Chargers first. The Los Angeles Chargers. They brought in Gus the Bus. They brought in Will Disley. They hired a head coach, brother of John Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh goes from Michigan into the Chargers. So we'll see what happens there. They did trade Austin Eckler to your Washington Commanders, or free agent signing, I should say. But they lost some players. Obviously, Mike Williams, he left. Gerald Everett, their tight end, he's in Chicago. Kenneth Murray went to Tennessee. So they lost some people there, which is, I think Austin Eckler is one of those guys. He's a little old for a running back. Gus the Bus is the same age though, which is interesting. Just less wear and tear. Will Disley comes in, and they bring in free safety Alohi Gilman. I don't see a lot with this team. I don't see a lot of. They're not really surprising if I let it off with them. I see a team with a new head coach, like anything, they're going to come in and see how does this team respond.
Yeah.
This is a team I would not draft anybody from.
Yeah, it's going to be weird because Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are gone, and they need receiver help. And they're sitting at number 5 in the draft, and just like the Cardinals, I said earlier, we're at number 4. Chargers are at number 5 in the upcoming NFL draft. Both of those teams can pick up some nice receiving talent. Like if the Cardinals wanted to, they could get Harrison Jr. out of college. If the Chargers want to go, Adunye, I think his name is, they can hit some receivers there, or they can trade back because teams are going to want to trade up for that fourth quarterback out of Michigan. JJ McCarthy? No, is that his name? Yeah. But anyway, so it's going to be interesting to see how they fill out these receiving needs on both those teams, the Cardinals and the Chargers. The Chargers need receiver help. They've lost two big weapons.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a team I would not touch. This is a do not touch team for me. And then I'm going to go to another team that's just a do not touch team for me, and that's the Denver Broncos. Like I know Sean Payton's there, but there's this thing where how much cachet does a guy get from a championship? And I think Sean Payton is riding his one championship like he is Bill Belichick. He's like, look, I won a championship. Look how smart I am. It's like, dude, you won one. Okay. Like just calm down. And I think that one of those things where he thinks he's smarter than he is. I mean,
oh yeah.
And I think that who knows, but I don't really see this team from the Broncos. I mean, they lost Russell Wilson, which is good. They traded away Jerry Jeudy to the Browns, which is good. Who's going to be their quarterback this year? They brought in Brandon Jones. They brought in Josh Reynolds from Detroit. But this is a team to me, it's a stay away team this year.
Yeah.
I don't see anything I like about this team in terms of what they bring back, and who they have.
Yeah, I mean, their problem is they don't have a quarterback, man. They do not have a quarterback right now, and that's got to be driving their coach crazy. They sit at number 12 in the upcoming NFL draft. They're going to be trying to trade up to get someone if they can. I don't think they have a lot of draft capital to do that. And man, if you don't have a quarterback, I don't care who your coach is. I mean, it's going to be a struggle. And I don't even love their, losing Judy, who's like, I don't know. He's okay, but he was one of their better receivers. He's gone. Yeah, I agree with you. Stay away from the Broncos, man. They're not a team I want to touch.
I mean, Javonte Williams is a good young running back, but okay, when there's 9 guys in the box, what are you gonna do? I mean, so this is where again we talk about draft. Javonte Williams is special, but is he really going to be special when he's going against nine people, the free safety up there? So I stay away from those guys on the Broncos. And then we'll go to the Raiders, another team that I'm not sure about. They got a new head coach, Antonio Pierce, who was the interim from Josh McDaniels, came in, 5-4. Seems like a very gung-ho type of guy. The Raiders brought in, they signed Christian Wilkins from the Dolphins.
That's huge.
That's
great
huge.
Defensive tackle. That was their big signing. Yep.
That was it. Gardner Minshew as quarterback. He comes in. They get rid of Jimmy G. And they lose Josh Jacobs, which I think it's a big deal to lose that 3-down back who led the league in yards 2 years ago. Didn't have a good year last year, but losing him, that's a tough one for me when you think about what the Raiders can do next year. I'm really not. I don't. Again, as a team, I would unless they do something crazy in the draft. I mean, do they have Devontae Adams? Devontae is 31. His best years are behind him, right? Is he even going to be with the team? Who knows? Jacoby Myers, a possession receiver. I don't see a lot with this team right now. They get Hunter Renfrow is gone. This is not a team that I really look at and be like, you know what, I'll take them. So if you're drafting anyone from the Raiders, I think it's a stay away.
Yeah, I don't love, from a fantasy perspective, a lot of what they have going on offense. I agree with you. I think their defensive line is going to be feisty and fun to watch, and I think they're going to cause some havoc. But I think they're a mid-tier team, man. I think they're not, primed to win that division. I think they're going to surprise teams here and there because of their the sack rate that they're probably going to produce at times. But the problem is defenses get tired in the fourth quarter when your offense can't stay on the field. So expect good halves from Las Vegas's defense in the first half, and then the second half it's going to be kind of a slog for them to get through the game. And from a fantasy perspective, I agree. I'm not that excited. I think their running back loss going to Green Bay is going to hurt them.
Yeah. All right, well, let's finish up here in this division with the Super Bowl champions, Kansas City Chiefs. I think the interesting for them, they did lose Nick Allegretti, their guard, who went from Kansas City to Washington, a 3-year deal, $16 million. So that's going to be a big deal. I think they lost their punter, which if I were Kansas City, I just wouldn't even have a punter. I would just get rid of that position and save the money. They did sign. I like this signing a lot. They did sign Hollywood Brown from Arizona. I think he is a mini Tyreek Hill. He's fast. He runs these deep outs. He's got good hands. He's going to make everyone from the depth chart go a little bit lower, right? So you still have Travis Kelce going through. I think having Marquise Brown is really going to help, and then it puts everyone down a little bit lower. Hopefully, Rashee Rice gets with his legal situation. He's probably call you, and he's a lawyer. We'll see what happens there. Obviously, the running back, his position is pretty solid. Coaching, quarterback, they're good. For anybody who's going to draft somebody from this team, I feel like it's go and just get anybody. You can't get Kelce, get Brown. You can't get Brown, get Rice. Get somebody from this offense. They're going to score a lot of points. And if you're doing IDBs, I think it's great to go ahead and get, if you can get a Chris Jones who re-signed, that's a guy who's going to have a lot of options to the quarterback when they're down 24-10. You got to throw the ball. Chris Jones is bearing down. I think that'd be some good stuff there. They did lose L'Jarius Sneed. They did trade him to the Titans. I am L'Jarius Sneed, who, if you remember, if you're a Baltimore fan, when Zay Flowers caught that ball and spiked it in L'Jarius Sneed, was like, how you like that catch? And then the very next play, L'Jarius Sneed knocked the ball out of Flowers' hand in the end zone, recovered, safety, and that's your game. That's what cornerbacks, really good cornerbacks, do. They forget about a play, then they can next play. So good for L'Jarius Sneed. Happy to see him not in Kansas City.
Yeah, he's one of the best cornerbacks out there, and that's going to be a little bit of a loss for them. But their defense played really well last year. They have a great defensive coordinator. I think they're going to be fine on defense. I think really that maybe their biggest offseason signing was just getting Chris Jones back on that defensive line. He wreaks havoc. And when you have Mahomes, man, like he could turn Hollywood Brown into like a premier receiver because he just lifts up. He turned a bunch of no names into something good. MVS going off in the playoffs was because of Mahomes, man. MVS isn't a good player. And so, I like Hollywood Brown there a lot. I think he's going to have a great year. That's a guy I would gamble on. And what's up with Rashee Rice, man? It's like you're speeding in a car, you get in a wreck, you and your buddies are like taking the contraband out of the car and running down the highway with it. Man, you're an NFL player, dude. Like, it always boggles my mind. It boggles my mind that you're on your way to be a multi-millionaire Super Bowl champion player, and you're acting like a knucklehead.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
We saw what happened with that kid in Las Vegas.
Yeah,
just doing something dumb to kill somebody, and then there you go. That's it.
Now he's in prison. NFL career's over.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. So are you giving that division?
This is where our sponsor of Uber and Lyft. If you're drunk, call an Uber. You're high, call Lyft, or vice versa. Doesn't matter. Just call somebody.
That's a nice division for Kansas City to be in to make another run at the playoffs.
Yep.
All right,
we got 3 left, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna hit the AFC South. Okay. We'll start with the team that has typically, this is very typical for them. The Colts in Indianapolis are very quiet in free agency. They don't do a whole lot, man. And so what they did was they took care of in-house re-signings, which is good. I mean, they have a good team. They have a nice young quarterback to build around. But they let me see if I can give you their biggest free agent signing. When you look at the free agency signings for Indianapolis, it's like all re-signings. It's all like started at Indy, stayed in Indy. They do get Joe Flacco. All right, that's a name. They get him from Cleveland as a backup. That's a nice kind of solid. Although it's strange to me that Anthony Richardson, who runs a completely separate style of offense, is going to be backed up by Joe Flacco, who couldn't be more of a statue at this phase of his career and just a pocket quarterback. So that's kind of it. I thought it was an interesting. I know he had a great year last year. He's a solid kind of backup, but it's just a totally different quarterback there.
Yeah.
And then they pick up Raekwon Davis, a defensive tackle from Miami, solid rotational player on a 2-year, $14 million deal. That's about it for Indy. And so I think, they're a team with some nice pieces on offense. I think they could use another receiver to help Michael Pittman out, because I don't think he's a true number one. I think he's a solid number two. But I like their pieces generally on offense. They have a dynamic young quarterback. Quite frankly, I think he's as good as any quarterback that's going to go in this year's draft, this upcoming draft. Like, I have a lot of faith if he can stay healthy. I think he's going to be a game changer for them. So if he can stay on the field, I expect them to cause some problems. But in terms of free agency, not a whole lot going on for Indy. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like, losing Zach Moss, kind of deal. Jonathan Taylor, is he going to come back? Is he going to be healthy?
Right.
See, I mean, this is a guy that I think that Jonathan Taylor last year was a first-round pick for many leagues. I feel like it's kind of a sleeper for some teams. If Anthony Richardson does come back and he's healthy and he runs the ball, how does that affect having Jonathan Taylor in that backfield? For me, I think that Richardson is a sleeper. If you're looking for a quarterback, again, it's someone I would take.
Yeah.
His floor is gonna be high. These running quarterbacks have high floors.
Yep.
And we don't know if hanging out with Flacco is gonna help him put some.
Maybe it will. Maybe
it
will. You're right. Yeah. Maybe a nice veteran who's not overwhelmed by anything anymore. I mean, Flacco falls asleep on the bench, like when his team's on defense. You know what I mean? He's chill at this point. Like, I think that could be helpful for a young quarterback.
Yep.
All right. The team that I think got a little bit better is the Jacksonville Jaguars. They signed Eric Armstead from San Francisco, another defensive line loss from San Fran. It goes to Jacksonville. He's 30 years old, but he's a solid player. They gave him a 3-year deal for $43 million. That was their big kind of signing. And they also went for Mr. Occasionally Explosive out of Buffalo at receiver to kind of bolster that receiver core, Gabe Davis. Who can score 4 touchdowns in a game and then go on a 7-week quiet streak and then blow up again. But we'll see.
By the way, on the 7 weeks quiet streak, he's your number 2 wide receiver. When he had his 4 touchdowns, he was on your bench. Just keep that in mind.
Right. And they also signed a nice safety, Darnell Savage from Green Bay, who I think was a nice pickup. So I think they made some good moves. I think they bolstered their team. They got better in some areas on defense that they needed to. They do lose Calvin Ridley, who signed a huge deal with Tennessee, who I'll get to in a second. I thought Calvin Ridley was a little hit or miss for them, quite frankly. I'm not sure that they should have given him a huge contract like Tennessee did. So it might be good that he left, but they are going to miss him. So I think that was the impetus for signing Gabe Davis, who I think is, quite frankly, kind of equivalent based on what I saw from Calvin Ridley last year. You can argue that point, but I thought Calvin was very streaky. And so, Jacksonville a little bit better. And then we got I'm going to save the best for last, the other team that I'm super excited about this year. But we got the Titans coming up next. Titans did a pretty good job. And I think they're in position in the draft to do pretty well too. So give me a second here. I'll go to Tennessee. They sign. So they get Calvin, like I just mentioned, but they get a really good center out of Denver. This Lloyd Cushenberry guy at center. He's 26 years old. They gave him a 4-year deal, $50 million. Now, I was joking Carolina for giving big money to linemen, but center to me is an important position to really solidify your offense. And Cushenberry is one of the better ones in the league. They get a Awuzie at cornerback from Cincinnati. Great cornerback, 3-year deal. And then, excitingly for fantasy, they signed Tony Pollard, running back from Dallas. Tony's only 26. He's only spent a year or two as like a feature back. I think he's got a lot left in the tank. If they can bolster their offensive line, which I think they're going to do in the draft, they already did it with Cushenberry at center. They're in prime position to pick up the best tackle in the draft. This guy, I think his name's Alt. at left tackle, they're going to be a better team, and I think they're going to be vying for contention as a wild card in that division with along with Jacksonville. So what I like about the Titans is that you can tell the direction they're building, and there seems like there's a plan there as opposed to other teams that are kind of all over the place. I think they're building up their line. I think they're solidifying their defense. I think they're going to be solid next year.
I tell you the player to look out for. This is the draftable player who's not a free agent at all, but you got to go back to this. Is like Tajay Spears, right? Running back out of Tulane.
Great call.
7 yards a carry as a senior in college. He had 100 carries last year. The guy in front of him, Derrick Henry, we talked about before, had 280 carries, right? So let's play that out. Let's put him on maybe another 90, 100, 200 carries for Kelly Spears. Maybe you give some to Tony Pollard. But I think that's a guy you can draft that no one's going to be thinking about, I think, early on. And you'll be like, oh, yeah, that guy. Because everyone's focused on Henry leaving and Pollard coming in. Spears is 22. He's 23 this year. That's a special age for running backs. That's going to be one of those guys you go like, oh, man, wow, he was a 5th-round pickup, and he's got 1,000 yards. So we'll see what happens there. And of course, quarterback is going to be the big question there. Is Will Levis ready, right? So we'll see.
Yeah, Will he's flashed. If they can bolster that offensive line, get him some weapons, I think I like the plan. You know what I mean? Like it's not a definite outcome yet, but I think they're moving in the right direction. I like the way that they're building. But the team in this division that I'm really excited about.
We're all excited about.
The team in this division that may be a new powerhouse in the AFC based on some of these moves, is the Houston Texans, man. They made the playoffs last year. As you know, they lost to Baltimore. They weren't quite at Baltimore's level when they went. They got an exciting young quarterback last year in the draft. They made the right pick. And look what they've done this offseason. They get Danielle Hunter from Minnesota, one of the best defensive and outside linebackers out there. He's 29 years old. He's really in his peak, his prime. He's going to rip it up for another 2 to 3 years. They signed him to a 2-year contract. They get Azeez Al-Shaair, linebacker from Tennessee. He was one of the more highly sought after linebackers at only 26 years old. They get to Nico Autry, a little bit older now, 33 years old, defensive end from Tennessee. He's a solid player. They got Tim Settle, big 300-plus pounder defensive tackle from Buffalo, originally drafted by Washington. They get Jeff Okudah at cornerback from Atlanta. That's a big name. 25 years old.
25 years old.
These are young, up-and-coming players, man, and the list just goes on and on. Their team was already good last year. They get Adelshawn Phillips, linebacker from Baltimore, rotational guy, 27 years old. They re-signed Noah Brown. They already got weapons at receiver. I mean, this is a team that looks a lot better on defense, man, and their offense is already on fire. And then they signed from Buffalo.
13. Hold on. Yeah. 13 free agents they signed. 13. And they kept 5. But okay, drum roll.
And then the most recent from Buffalo, Stephon Diggs, to fill out a receiving core that was already on fire, dude. Are you kidding me with Houston? They got running backs there now too. I mean, it's just like, watch out, bro. Because I really think this is one of the better teams in the league, at least on paper right now.
Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz. I mean,
Stephon Diggs
coming like, you know, as the substitute for Tank Dell or Nico Collins. You know, like it's just depth is going to be just amazing. So, you know, if they've three wide receivers out and you've got, you know, this is a team where, again, we talk about draft the running back. Because that running back, when the quarterbacks are going out and it's 3 deep and the running slants, the running back is going against one person. One cut, go, done. See you, bye. Have a nice day.
Yeah, and they have one of the best offensive lines in the league. I mean, they're stout up front, man. They've got some great offensive linemen. This team, man, I'm telling you, like if they played, this is the year that they could outdo Baltimore.
Oh yeah, no, for
You
sure.
know?
This if they ever played this game this year, it could be totally different. So it's exciting. I mean, for if you're Houston, if you're Atlanta, buy season tickets, go see your team. This is going to be a fun year for you.
Yeah.
You had to put it down. And really, I mean, how lucky is Houston for getting that pick they got? I mean,
Yeah.
yes, I mean to get it's like it's one of those stupid dumb luck things where you get a number 2 pick and you get the guy. It's kind of crazy how that works. And they didn't really lose too much. I mean, lots of defensive guys here. Devin Singletary now New York Giants. Um, but the team didn't really lose a heck of a lot for what they had. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a fun team.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun team to watch. It's a team I would definitely want a piece of. I mean, I want a piece of Atlanta. I want a piece of Houston.
Yeah.
It's just fun, and they're going to spread the ball. It's just going to be
Yeah.
fun. It's going to be going. Yeah, it's going to be great. And I
And this
love
is
their
one of those
addition.
things we talk about with like, okay, well, would you rather have Nico Collins, a wide receiver 2, maybe 1, maybe 3 on this team, or would you rather have the number 1 receiver in New England? It's like, no thanks. I don't
Give
want
me Nico
100%.
all day.
Yeah,
Give me
I don't want
Nico all day.
100% of garbage.
I think Nico would be a number 1 on a lot of other teams.
Yeah,
He
yeah,
had a
for
great
sure.
year last year.
Yeah. Now
Yeah.
the
So
thing with Stephon Diggs, I will say, Stephon Diggs did kind of slide last year.
for
He started
sure.
off pretty good, took a slide. So we'll see. That was also like an offensive coordinator change. We'll see what
Yeah.
happens.
I think I was looking at some of the stats on Stefan. He had like 32 explosive plays last year. Explosive meaning like for more than 15 yards, but almost all of them came on plays that had broken down with Josh Allen kind of creating out of the pocket. He doesn't make explosive plays anymore inside the construct of the offensive play calling. Seems to be having a little trouble with the pressure, the bump and run, kind of in your
Yep.
face type breaking free from the coverage. He's not as good at that as he was, 3-4 years ago, but he's still very crafty and can get open on the fly. So I think he's a huge addition for them.
Yep.
Hey, Graham, at this point, I want to pause because I need to get a cord. Graham, so who do you have next? This is your last one, right?
The last one. So we have moving on to the NFC North, a kind of exciting division, except for one team. So we're going to start with the least exciting team, which is the Chicago Bears. The
Really?
Bears. The Bears. I think the least exciting team.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's talk about that.
First of all, okay, so the Bears versus Jesus. What's the score? The Bears 34, Jesus 2. Remember those things back in the day? You ever remember that stuff? We got
Man.
We got canceled by the evangelicals. Yeah, so I mean, for me, Chicago, like, first of all, this whole Justin Fields thing is just a complete disaster, in my opinion. Giving him no help, not letting him learn from a veteran, and then trading him for nothing. It's just a complete, just a waste of a couple years. Like, Justin Fields, had he gone to Green Bay and done the Jordan Love treatment or done the Aaron Rodgers treatment, he'd be a different quarterback. And I think this is a big thing with these players. You got to go to a good organization. So anyway, I don't like the Justin Fields thing. I feel bad for him. He's now in Pittsburgh. They lost Darnell Mooney, who went to Atlanta. Justin Jones, defensive tackle, to Arizona. Dante Foreman, running back, went to Cleveland. Who they brought in? They brought in DeAndre Swift. I don't know why. Jalen Johnson, who they re-signed. I really don't see this team as doing anything. Chicago, to me, is just a very Kevin Byard, the strong safety out of Philadelphia. This team does nothing for me. This is a team I would just, again, stay away. I'm not on this team at all. I don't like what they've done. They seem to me very boring. What about?
Okay, hold on. I got to push back. Can I
Go
push
for
back?
it.
All right.
Yeah.
They're going to have the number 1 pick in the draft. They're going to get Caleb Williams. who is, heralded as the number one pick. They're not going to mess that up. They're going to pick him. They signed Keenan Allen from San Diego, right? Or not San Diego, but the LA Chargers.
Yeah, yeah.
They've got their receiver
Jim Moore.
from DJ Moore, who they got from Carolina. Those are two nice outside receivers. They're going to have the number one quarterback in the draft. That's a reason for excitement, right?
Yes, but track record being they haven't had a good quarterback in how long? They took Mitch Trubisky and they messed that up. They took Justin Fields and messed that up. Caleb Williams, if you're watching our podcast, you got to pull who was a quarterback who said I'm not signing. I forget who that was. Anyway, you got to get out of Chicago. Don't go to Chicago. It's not a place you want to be. I'm sorry, but they haven't done well by quarterback in forever. So,
are you talking about when Eli pulling an
Eli? Yeah, when Eli pulled it. He
yeah.
wasn't. Yeah, he can pull Eli. It's not a team you want to go to. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't see a lot happening.
Okay. Well, we'll see what happens. I think they've got a lot of draft picks. I think their general manager Poles has done a pretty good job in the last year lining up some draft picks. We'll see what it looks like after the draft. Maybe you'll be a little more excited about it with some of their picks coming in. Maybe they get a nice receiver to add into the mix with their two elder statesmen they have there. Although DJ Moore's not that old at this point, he's only 26, but it feels like he's been in the league for. I mean, doesn't it feel like DJ Moore's been in the league for 8 years? He's 26 years old.
And I want him to do well. He's a Maryland guy. I want him to do well. We'll see what happens there. But I just feel like having a rookie quarterback come into that system, I wouldn't touch any of the receivers because the receivers aren't going to get balls where they want them, right? So a team I would just stay away from. I mean, think about the top 10 rookie quarterbacks, and look at their stats and go, okay, you know what? If Caleb Williams is an average of that, what would that look like? And I wouldn't touch it. So
okay, all right. Well, listen, Chicago, I'm rooting for you. Obviously, Graham hates you. I hope you do well.
So the next, a little bit less boring teams, I have more faith here, is the Minnesota Vikings. Now, they did lose their quarterback in Kirk Cousins.
Yep.
They did bring in Aaron Jones, which I thought was interesting that they could steal that from the Packers. They brought in Sam Darnold, so we'll see what happens there.
Yep.
And they brought in Jonathan Greenwald from the Texans linebacker. So, I look at this team, Minnesota, again, they still have Justin Jefferson, who apparently had signed off on the Kirk Cousins trade or free agency, which we'll see what happens there. But Justin Jefferson I think his number is going to go down. Last year, he was a first-round pick. Who's throwing him the ball this year? Again, one of those players you go, ultimately, so much talent, but you have to have somebody throw you the ball. And I don't really see who's going to get that ball.
I think they're hoping that the Darnold experiment is going to be similar to what Tampa Bay did last year with Baker Mayfield. I think they're hoping, look, this is a first-round pick guy. I think he was the first quarterback taken the year he was drafted. And I think they're hoping for, look, he's had some time to cook. He's ready to go. And they have a great supporting cast to give him a shot. Although I will say, from what I'm hearing, they're going to be one of those teams that may be looking to move up and try to grab the J.J. McCarthy kid at the fourth quarterback take, and one of those upper, level quarterbacks in the draft to maybe kind of sit behind Darnold for a period of time and see what happens. But they got some great receivers, and Addison last year, rookie receiver, did a great job. I mean, they have a nice little offense going with Hawkinson at tight end. It's a nice, if I was a rookie quarterback, it's where I'd want to go.
Well, and then just compare that to Chicago. This is why I say Chicago is boring, because you look at Minnesota and you put a rookie quarterback there, and you go, hey, Justin Jefferson, he's one of the best wide receivers of the last decade. That's who you can target and be like, okay, let's go up to that guy. Or you go DJ Moore. No offense, DJ Moore, I love you, a Maryland guy, but you're not Justin Jefferson. So let's go to the next exciting team, a little more exciting, the Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
The Detroit Lions. Now, Detroit they got a great head coach. great culture, great team. They lost Josh Reynolds to the Broncos. They lost Jonah Jackson to the Rams, left guard. They brought in Kevin Zeitler, a guard for the Ravens. But then I think what's really, again, this is interesting when you look at who they signed, is they signed 3 defensive players, a defensive tackle, DJ Reader, quarterback, and a defensive end, right? So this is a team that goes, you know what? We like our quarterback. We like our offense. What we need to get better at is on defense. So Nick Robertson, Marcus Davenport, Khalil Dorsey, who they re-signed, Kendall Little, they re-signed. So they kept some guys, they added some guys. I like what they're doing. Detroit is a fun offense. They got better at defense. This is going to be an exciting team, and a team where, if you're looking to draft somebody, their quarterback is, he's coming along, right? Their receiver, their tight end, who is just a Travis Kelce clone. This is going to be a fun team. I really feel like this Detroit team is a NFL ticket team to be.
Yeah, Detroit was like, how I feel about Houston and Atlanta this year. That's how I felt about Detroit last year. I was ready for some exciting kind of traction. They were up and coming, and they lived up to the hype, man. They had such a great run. I love their head coach. He is such a player's coach. He gets them all so pumped up, man. What a fun team to watch and root for. Especially, you gotta love rooting for the teams that have struggled for so many decades. And when they finally make that turnaround, you're like, you know what? I don't live in Detroit. I don't know anything about the Detroit. I'm not but you can't help but pull for them.
Yeah. So here's a name. If you're drafting, Jameson Williams. I'm going to say it wrong. Jameson Williams, played 12 games. He came in late, 22 years old.
Yep.
The sun god is ahead of him. Sam Laporte is right there. And here's Jameson Williams, that burner just going over the top, catching those balls. That's going to be a guy he's going to have 50 catches and maybe 15 touchdowns. I mean, it's that kind of guy. You go he's your wide receiver 3, and you win a couple weeks because he had 2 deep balls, 150 yards, call it a day.
Yeah, he's ridiculous. I hope he can stay healthy. I mean, they gave him, there's a play I remember from last year with Jameson Williams where they gave him like a end around sweep, and he put it into a gear so quickly. He went from 1st to 6th gear. He had a gear that no one else in the field had, and he went into hyper warp and just ran through the defense. They couldn't even get to him, and he dove. I mean, it was just it showcased how explosive his speed is. So I hope he can stay healthy and open it up for him.
Yeah, so my last team, I'm going to wrap it up with a team that I drafted this guy a couple years ago, waiting for his big play, big day, big year, and this is Green Bay. I like what the Packers have done. I think they're the most exciting team from a quarterback's position. I feel like Jordan Love he looks like Aaron Rodgers with his fadeaway throws that he puts up there. He will unlock this offense like he did last year. They kept my secret weapon from 2 years ago, Kayshawn Nixon, the kick returner / cornerback, who won me a bunch of playoff games. See, my man, I owe you a beer if you ever see you. Then they dropped Aaron Jones, who I do like Aaron Jones, but they brought in Josh Jacobs, who I think in that offense is just going to have so much fun, from little kick out, flare passes, stuff out to the flat. They signed a safety, Xavier McKinney. I like what the Packers have done. They kept it really simple. They changed up their running back. They have a good head coach, a good organization.
Yeah.
When they lost Devontae Adams when he went to Vegas, they kept humming along, right? And they have a really young team.
Yep.
Jaden Reed, Romeo Dobbs. These guys are 24 years old. I mean, it's going to be
Watson.
fun to watch.
Yeah.
Christian Watson,
Christian
Watson was injured for half the year. So, I mean, what a fun young team across the board.
Yeah, even I'm blanking on their names right now. I don't want to look at their roster, but they even had like a 4th and a 5th wide receiver guy that during the course of some injuries would step in, and Jordan Love was lighting them up. I remember picking guys up off the waiver wire, like, oh, receiver for Green Bay. I don't recognize his name.
Dontavian Wicks. Dontavian Wicks. Yeah.
Wicks. Yeah, I picked up Wicks a couple weeks. He went off. I mean, they have a nice young team, exciting. That's another like offense you want to keep your eye on, I think.
So I think from a fun look at that team, I think it's been a really good team to see. They did get to keep AJ Dillon, who was he's pretty steady. He's 25 years old. Josh Jacobs was 26 years old. These guys are young running backs where Aaron Jones was 29. So they got the youngest team just got younger. And I think if you don't take Jordan Love in the first 3 rounds, three quarterbacks, I think you're gonna miss out. I think you got to go after Jones. He's gonna have one of those like, holy crap, he had 5,000 yards this year. What happened?
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I was watching. I stumbled into a YouTube highlight reel from last year of Jordan Love's, and he throws some pretty balls, man. I like he's an exciting young player. Occasional bonehead move, a decision. He's still learning, but I mean, some of the throws he made last year were just ridiculous.
Yeah, and I think this really goes into, if you think about the big thing with this goes into, please let your quarterback sit and watch for a year or two. I mean, just like, that's just, to me, the biggest thing with this is like, Jordan Love is 25 years old. Like, year 1, he had 62 attempts. Year 2, 21 attempts. Year 3, 579 attempts, 32 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Like, that works. Look at Patrick Mahomes. I mean, same thing. Year 1, chilled out the bench. Year 2, 50 touchdowns. Like, if you're watching Chicago, I'll go back to Chicago. If you're watching, draft your quarterback and then like tell them, just chill, watch tape.
Yeah, it's good stuff. So who you picking? Who you picking in that division to win it?
Oh, Green Bay. I think Green Bay is going to take this thing. I think Green Bay is going 14-2. I think Green Bay is gonna surprise a lot of people. This is a year that Green Bay just goes like, holy crap, wow, I didn't see that coming. This is a Green Bay year.
All right, man, over Detroit. I'm gonna hold you to it. I think Detroit's gonna get in trouble, but we'll see, man. It's gonna be a battle.
I think Detroit's going. Well, I know it's 17 games, so it'd be 14-3. I think Detroit's going 11-6.
Okay.
5. Detroit's gonna be there. I feel like the Minnesota and the Bears, the Vikings and Bears are gonna suck, but the Vikings will be at least fun to watch.
Okay. All right, good stuff, man. We'll do the last division and the NFC. Okay.
Here we go.
NFC East. This is hard for me because I hate 3 of these teams so much. And anyway, we'll start each one. I just can't stand even worse than the other one. But I'll start with the Eagles.
Start with the hate factor, maybe one way or the other. Give us a gradient of hate factor. So
normally I would start with the Cowboys on that, but they've done so little in the offseason that I get joy out of talking about them. So I'll go with the Eagles first, okay? And so we go to Philadelphia here. Let's see what Philly's up to, what they've done in the offseason. They have signed probably the biggest thing in terms of fantasy is Saquon Barkley. They get him from the Giants. That's huge for them and irritates me greatly because I think he's one of the premier running backs when healthy in the league. I think he was coming off injury last year, a little slowed down by that, but still showing flashes. He's only 27. That was a huge get for them. They tried the kind of running back by committee last year with a lot of different guys, signing maybe 4 different guys in the offseason last year to come in. No one really stuck and hit, and I think Saquon is huge for them. They go heavy though, so that was huge. You couldn't get.
Well, it's huge for 2 ways because you've taken him away from your rival for 2 games a season.
Yep.
Right. So that's the big thing about this is like when you take your rivals, you take them away, make them weaker, and now you're stronger against them. So it's a double bonus.
Yep. And then after getting that, and they're great at receiver. They're great at quarterback. So that was a huge positional kind of lockdown for them. And then they focused on defense a lot in free agency. They get Bryce Huff, outside linebacker from the New York Jets, only 25 years old. They steal Chauncey Gardner-Johnson at safety, 26 years old, from Detroit. They get Devin White, inside linebacker from Tampa Bay.
That's big. For especially
That,
for a 1 year deal, $4 million. I mean, that's for a 26-year-old inside
yeah,
linebacker. I mean, that's a steal.
yep. And so that I think they've gotten better. I think just having Saquon Barkley back there on offense makes them very dangerous. I think it's going to bring a lot of excitement to their offense. I think it's going to help their quarterback out a lot. He can lean on Saquon. And then I think they've bolstered their defense. Their defense fell apart last year. They needed some signings. And then I could go down the list. I mean, they signed a lot of defensive players from different teams, kind of rotational guys, names that you wouldn't necessarily recognize, a lot of 1 year deals. But they really kind of just redid their defense, and they needed to. In terms of players that Philly let go, DeAndre Swift, as you mentioned, is in Chicago. He was a rotational running back, often injured. They lost Kevin Byard, safety. He fell apart last year. And they lost Quez Watkins at receiver. He goes to Pittsburgh. They're not going to miss him. They lose Zacchaeus at receiver. He's more of like a return specialist. He goes to Washington. So really, they added, they replaced DeAndre Swift with Saquon Barkley. That's a huge upgrade. And their defense is better, I think. So I think they're going to be a better team. I think they're the ones to really watch out in the NFC East in terms of winning that division.
They also traded for Kenny Pickett. So Pickett goes across the state from Pittsburgh into Philly. So apparently Philly was like his team he liked when he was a kid. So we'll see what Pickett can do there. I feel this is a big year for Jalen Hurts, right? So, he's had a couple good years, but there's some times where he just can't do it. 23 touchdowns, he threw 15 interceptions. That's not a good ratio for your running back. And when you think about, like, he did score 15 touchdowns on the ground, okay, well, and DeAndre Swift had 5, so there's 20 touchdowns.
Yeah.
Saquon Barkley. I mean, from a fantasy standpoint,
yeah,
you want Jalen Hurts running that ball in and doing that push, or you know what, Jalen Hurts take it over the top with your Superman, or take it outside. So I feel like if you look at what Saquon did, I bet you he's got a double-digit touchdown in him this year. So maybe a good second round running back. We'll see.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to defend that because it helps Saquon a lot with his numbers, just with the threat of the running quarterback with that option play. You don't know who's going to end up with the ball, and that opens up lanes, man. And so both those guys are going to benefit from having each other to rely on. And let me just throw in it real quick at the end in terms of Philly. They signed Paris Campbell, wide receiver. Who came in for a steal from the Giants. And he's, not a premier number 1 or anything, but he's a nice addition to their receiving core. And they also get Devontae Parker, who may be at the end, but he's a talented guy. He's 31. It's probably going to be his last stop. But again, just bolsters the depth for injuries and stuff. Guys that have been around, they know what they're doing, and they have some potential. So Philly's to me, the team to beat in this division. And maybe I should have saved them for last, but I'm going to save my Commanders for last because, you know how I do. But let's talk about the Cowboys real quick because they've been awfully quiet. And it was interesting because Jerry Jones, who can never stop running his mouth, went at the beginning of the offseason saying, we're going to make these big moves and we're all in, and everyone got excited. And then they did nothing. Or not a whole lot. They get Eric Kendricks, inside linebacker from the Chargers, 1 year deal, $3 million. That was their big, really offseason signing, and that's just kind of an average linebacker who's kind of at the end of his run. Sign a couple 1 year guys at cornerback. Jordan Lewis, they re-signed him. They re-signed Goodwin at cornerback. There's really nothing of note here.
Yeah, they kept 4 and they signed 1. I mean, comparatively, like, look at Houston, who signed 13 and kept 5.
Yeah.
I mean, 18 versus 5. And I think, so I'm wondering if is Dallas, are they thinking that, what, maybe this is the end of the Dak Prescott era? Maybe, maybe we sort of ride this out, maybe trade him somewhere else, get something different. I don't know. I mean, like,
Yeah.
I don't know what
Oh,
they're doing.
yeah, they've had a lot of losses. I mean, Washington stole from them. They got Washington got Dorrance Armstrong, who's a very solid defensive end. They stole Dallas's defensive coordinator as head coach, so he's bringing Dorrance Armstrong with him. They get a center in Tyler Biadasz, who's a very solid player, 26 years old. Washington gets them from Dallas, so Dallas loses their center. Dallas loses their running back and Tony Pollard to Tennessee. They lose their Hall of Fame, future Hall of Fame left tackle Tyron Smith to the New York Jets. They lose Dante Fowler Jr., rotational defensive end, to Washington. And so they've lost a lot of big names, a lot of pieces in Dallas, and they haven't done much to replace it. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think that this is the year that the off year for Dallas, which I can really enjoy. So I don't expect them to vie for this division. I expect them to finish around third, somewhere.
Here, what's interesting to me is that, like, their backup quarterback, Cooper Rush, is the same age as their quarterback, right? So, like, typically when you have a quarterback, you've got a guy who's 30 and a guy who's like 24 learning, right? 21 learning. Or you
Right.
have a guy like who's 30 and you have a Joe Flacco who's 100 who's like teaching. You have these sort of different dynamics in these quarterbacks. Having two guys the same age and the other guy isn't really a big skill set difference. It seems like, to me, it seems like Dallas, New England, and I'm not being an ageist here, but the teams with some of the older owners who are more hands-on are missing out on what's happening, where you see like some of the, you see some of the guys like Mike McDonald, or not Mike, or the guy in Miami. Mike
The
McDaniel.
quarterback?
Well, no, the head coach.
McDaniels, yeah.
McDaniels.
McDaniels, yeah.
Like, these younger guys are just doing more things dynamic and changing things up and just being different in their teams, right? So, and who they pick, who they draft, all that type of stuff. And Jerry Jones, we know, is like in it, and it's like, at some point you got to say, you know what, let me just write the checks and let other guys do the work. So
Yeah, it's hard to say. It's hard to say what they're doing this year. Are they trying to save their money because they know they got to pay Dak? Are they saying we can't make a lot? We don't have a lot to spend if we're going to re-sign Dak. Like, I don't know exactly what they're thinking. I just know that they're having some salary cap issues where they can't make, because it drives Jerry Jones crazy when he can't make a big splash in the offseason.
Oh yeah, for sure. And they've gone how many years of not winning more than one playoff game? I mean, it's just Dak is 73-41 as a starter since 2016, and from the playoffs they're 2-5. Right, so 2 wins over the time. Dak's 30. Are you going to give him that big deal right at 30 years old when he is who he is, right?
Yep, he's somewhere in around the 11 or 12 best quarterback range, in my opinion. And that's good. That's hard to find. There's a lot of teams that would love to have the 11th or 12th best quarterback in the league, but does it get you over the hump? Is it someone you want to give, $200+ million to? That's the question. So yeah, I'm happy that Dallas is struggling a little bit, and it pleases me greatly. And so Philly, I'm worried about. Dallas, I'm not so worried about. And then on to the Giants, who also have kind of their share of problems. I don't know if it's as bad as Dallas is right now, but let's see who they lost first. The Giants, the G-Men, they lose Xavier McKinney at safety, who goes to Green Bay. He was a solid safety, only 24 years old. They lose Saquon Barkley to Philly, 27 years old. They lose their rotational defensive end, Ashawn Robinson, I mentioned earlier, to Carolina, who got a huge deal. They lose their backup, Tyrod Taylor, who was, I can't just look at the Jets last year. You have to have a good backup quarterback. So losing him hurts. I know the Giants are not happy with their quarterback situation. I think the Giants, Denver, Las Vegas, and Minnesota are the 4 teams that are going to be competing to move up in that 4th and 5th spot with Arizona and the Chargers in the draft to try to nab a quarterback, because I think the Giants made a mistake when they signed Jones to the long-term deal a year or 2 ago. I think if they had to do that all over again, they never would have done that. He looked horrible again last year. And so, the G-Men have had some losses. Now, who have they signed to try to replace some of this stuff? Well, they got a really good guard in John Runyon from Green Bay, signed him. That was their biggest signing, 3-year deal to try to bolster that line, which really needs help. To try to stop the bleeding, they get Devin Singletary from Houston, not a running back that I'm super excited about. I think we know what Devin Singletary is at this point. I think he's kind of a running back, third down type of running back to catch passes out of the backfield, but they signed him to a 3-year deal. They try to bolster their line again with a right tackle they got from Vegas. Um, uh, I don't know how to say his last name, but it's a fairly substantial deal, $7 million a year for 2 years. Jermaine Elowaminor. They got Drew Lock to back up Jones at quarterback from Seattle. They got another guard.
But they have DeVito who like pulled
Right.
who pulled a Linsanity type move last year when he won a couple games.
Yeah, but we know he's not the future. He faded. And they got another guard from Minnesota. So they're working on their offensive line. They're trying to make the moves that aren't, real sexy, but they're trying to get better kind of in the trenches. And then they signed didn't they sign someone on the defensive line, Graham? I thought they had a big defensive line signing. Am I missing that?
They made that trade. No, they made the trade with Carolina. That's what it was. They stole that trade from Carolina. The Giants signed Carolina's top player, and they got him for like a 6th-round pick.
Okay.
Yeah.
And on the D line. So I mean, they've made some moves. They're trying to get better in the trenches. I get that, but I think until they figure it out at quarterback, they're going to be a team that struggles.
They got Brian Burns from the Panthers for
That's who it was.
For a 2nd round and a 2025 5th round. And swapped 5th rounders this year. So they were last year they were going to trade Brian Burns for a 1st-round pick.
Right.
And holding on to him, they went and they got less of a pick. And then they went ahead and for a defensive end, they kind of got rid of that guy. It's just like I don't understand what Carolina was doing. So we're like, just to jump back real fast to Carolina. So Carolina traded him away. And they went ahead and signed A'Shawn Robinson for 3 years of 22.5. It's just like,
what's going? Carolina's a mess.
Yeah,
because Carolina actually got offered 2 1st-round picks for Burns, and the LA Rams wanted Burns for 2 1st-round picks. They turned it down, and then they end up sending him to the Giants the next year. So that's a great move by the G-men. I think Brian Burns is a great player. But again, problems at receiver. Problems on offense, no Saquon Barkley, problems at quarterback. That's another team offensively that I would personally stay away from.
Yeah, so they had, in the running game, 247 carries for Barkley. He's gone. A 28-year-old Matt Breida got 55 carries. That's a big difference there. Daniel Jones, 40 carries, right? Tyrod Taylor, 38. He's gone. Tommy DeVito, 36 carries. He's not going to play. Eric Gray, a running back, got 17 carries. Wan'Dale Robinson, so this running back, this is one of those things like, do not draft a running back from New York.
Yeah.
Wait and see what happens. If they draft somebody or 2nd-round pick or whatever, this is where you say, hey, there's a lot of carries to be had. Who's going to get them? If they pick up a running back in the 2nd round, maybe that's a guy you kind of pick up in like the 17th round of your draft and go, you know what? Someone's got to get picked, some rushing yards there. Maybe I'll get that running back, whoever they draft the 2nd or 3rd round. But only if you're in desperate need.
Yep. I'm not afraid of the Giants. I think they're going to have a nice, solid defensive roster, but in terms of their offense, I think they're going to struggle. I'm not scared of them as a Commanders fan. I'm not scared of the Cowboys as a Commanders fan. I think it's Philly's division to win again this year. But I will say, finally, at the end of the podcast, we'll end with my Commanders. We started with your Ravens. We'll end with my Commanders. They have new ownership. Praise God. I mean, that was a long time coming. It was 20 years of just torture with Dan Snyder. So the new ownership comes in. And what they've done, they had a lot of cap room, a lot of cap money to spend. And I think they did it really wisely. They didn't blow the bank on any one player like Carolina did, with all this money spending on guards and stuff. But they really filled out a roster that really needed just a reshuffling of the deck. And so I'll just run through kind of who they picked up that I'm excited about. So like I said before, they got Dorrance Armstrong, who's a very solid defensive end from Dallas, who follows the defensive coordinator to Washington. He's 26 years old. They get Frankie Louvu at linebacker from Carolina. That guy plays with his hair on fire. He's great at getting to the quarterback. They bolster their offensive line, which was much needed, with Tyler Biadasz at center from Dallas. And they get Nick Allegretti, who's a guard at Kansas City, started in the Super Bowl and was injured, played through it. He's 27 years old. He's a gritty player. He's an upgrade for them at guard, a huge upgrade. They get Austin Eckler at running back, who I think is worth kicking the tires on. He had an off year last year. He was injured, but I think if he's got stuff left in the tank, he's going to be a nice addition for them. They already have a nice running back there. I think Eckler is a great add. They get Bobby Wagner at linebacker to pair with Frankie Louvu. And I see that kind of as a Baltimore situation where you get the older, wiser guy coming in, helping out these younger linebackers. Like Louvu is in the queen role, and Wagner's going to come in and run the show. I think he's got a year or two left under him. And these are short-term deals. They didn't sign anyone to huge money in long-term deals, which made me happy. They get Jeremy Chin at safety from Carolina. They get Cleveland Farrell at defensive end from San Francisco. They get Dante Fowler Jr. at defensive end from Dallas. Look, these are 1 year, 2 year deals. These aren't, guys that broke the bank. They're great rotational signings, and there's more. But those are kind of the main names. So I'm really excited that I see a plan unfolding, and I like the way it looks. Are they going to win the division? No, but they are going to be an improved team. And just knowing that someone's at the helm that's kind of turning this team around in the right direction, kind of turning the ship around, just as a fan, makes me really happy. Washington did lose Curtis Samuel, who went to Buffalo. So I think they're going to draft a receiver in the second round. They did lose Kendall Fuller to Miami, who's a nice cornerback, very smart, a little bit athletically, kind of not athletic, but size, a little bit limited. They lose Antonio Gibson, who never was a great fit in Washington, quite frankly. And the loss that hurts me the most are two of them: Cameron Curl, as I said, to the Rams at safety, and Jacoby Brissett, who I thought was a great backup. Now, when you lose Brissett and you lose Howell, what are you going to do? You bring in Mariota. Not excited about that. So they're going to draft someone. They got the second pick in the draft. They're going to get one of the better quarterbacks, and I think that's going to be exciting. I think they're going to pick the running quarterback out of LSU in the same mold that Baltimore has at young, explosive running quarterback. So, yeah, look, it's a team that's kind of turning it around. I'm excited to see how they do. I think they could win 7 or 8 games, potentially, with a kind of new lifeblood in the team. And I think they have a chance, because the Giants and Dallas are a little down. I think they have a chance at vying for second place. They're probably going to end up in third or fourth, but at least they have a chance, and I'm excited about that.
Yeah, I feel like they are if you look at trajectory, I feel like the Cowboys are on a downward spiral. The Giants are a downward spiral. They both have roster issues. They both have money issues. The Commanders don't. The Commanders have new ownership who's always energized.
Yep.
They signed 22 free agents, either signing or re-signing. Of those, 16 are on 1-year deals. So what you see of this team is the team is in transition, right? So they know that, like, bring in this rookie quarterback, get through this thing. Mariota's a great quarterback. He started many games. He can come in and kind of hold the fort down, and then bring in this other quarterback, as he did in Atlanta. When he was in Atlanta, he started those first 10 games, and they brought in a quarterback. So I think that they're going on the right direction. Just about like, how is this going to look in how fast will this turn around and come around? So I think they're going in the right place, as you said, bringing in someone like a Bobby Wagner, who's 34 years old, but he can bring in steady the defense in terms of game planning, practice squad, third down coverage, things like that. We'll see. And then I think the best thing about this draft is that because the Redskins don't have the first pick, that makes it easier, right?
Yeah.
So, instead of having this pressure where, like, hey, we have the number 1 pick, and then this guy comes in like, I'm the man, they have to get another guy, which sometimes works in your favor, like Houston. last year.
Yeah. And I think, the decision they're going to have to make is, do we go Jaden Daniels out of LSU, who can run, the 4.5 40, really explosive on the ground, or do we go with Drake May, who seems to be kind of a Josh Allen kind of mold, but may need a year to cook? I think they're going to go with Jaden Daniels. I've been back and forth on this every week, but I think it's going to be Jaden Daniels. And the other thing that's exciting about the Commanders to me is I think they have 6 picks in the first 100, which is a nice kind of position to kind of really fill out some needs. So that's the other thing. That's the other reason I think they have a chance at fighting for second place in the division. Because if they can hit on some of these draft picks, and with the new ownership, you feel hopeful. They get it. They're GMs from San Fran who's had a lot of success. So you're hoping they make the right picks and fill out the roster a little bit more.
Okay, so let's do two things. One, I want to remind everybody that the Chicago Bears have the #1 pick in the draft from the Carolina Panthers because the Carolina Panthers ownership are idiots. So to remind everybody to go back and let's look at the history of why Carolina gave up that pick to the Bears and why they have it. So that's #1. #2, we'll talk about is the move. What free agency move or trade did you go like, oh, that's gonna be fun? What's like the one time you were like, you know what? Wow, this is gonna be a fun team.
Yeah. So I think what stands out to me, really 3 things that jump to my mind. The Stephon Diggs to Houston, I think is huge. I think the Saquon Barkley to Philly was huge. And I know this is where I had to push back a little bit. I think Keenan Allen is such a consummate pro. I think knowing that they're going to have a rookie quarterback there was probably, at least for the first year, because I don't know how much Keenan has left in the tank, but for the first year, what a great receiver to have on the team, a guy that does nothing but get open for you. And so I have to give Chicago a little bit of props for that signing because out of all the free agent receivers, I think that guy is a perfect fit for a rookie quarterback. Those are some things that stand out to me. What about you?
I think for me it was from my homer standpoint, my number 3, but is my homer is like seeing Derrick Henry in Baltimore.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that was we all kind of knew it was coming, but it was like, okay, yeah, this will be a lot of fun. But #2 was like Stephon Diggs. I didn't see that one coming at all.
Yeah.
And then going to Houston, which is so loaded already, was like,
Yeah.
man, like no, like almost where Baltimore didn't want to give up a 6th-round pick for this. Like it
I
almost
know.
is like, why did my team do this? So that was that part. And then the one that I think is like thank you about time was Kirk Cousins going to Atlanta.
Good
Atlanta
call.
needed a quarterback to unlock that talent they have around the roster.
Good
Uh,
call.
and so that was the one I was like, oh, you know what? That's going to be fun to watch. I mean, like Kirk is old, but hey, it's indoor, it's turf. There's
Yep.
8 games with no weather. I mean, he was in Minnesota, same thing.
Yeah.
He probably wouldn't know where he is half the time. We'll be like, oh, okay, I guess I'm here. So that like I'm happy to see like that for Minnesota and their fan base, or not Minnesota, Atlanta and their fan base. Just
Yep.
what a fun time for those guys to like have a real quarterback that will show up, that will prepare. Now, look, he's gonna miss some throws, he's gonna do some dumb things. He's gonna get injured at some point with the sacks he takes. But, like, Kyle Pitts, like when he heard that news, is like, oh, I guess I can start catching
Yeah.
balls again.
Yeah, it's going to be, and he's going to be happy being in Atlanta because his wife's from there. I think he's going to feel comfortable there. I think the family's going to be happy. It's just a good setup for him.
Yeah.
And then I do like Big Mike Williams to the Jets. I think that they already had a nice offense. I think that's a good addition. He's a great possession guy that they needed on the outside. He can stay healthy, and yeah. So those are just some of the big names, and there's a lot of defensive shifting throughout the league, which I think we covered a lot of it. And some teams that are going to be vying for it. Love the Texans. I love Miami, the Jets. I love Atlanta. I love Houston. It's good stuff, man.
Yeah. I want to see what the Steelers do if the Steelers are get creative. I would love to see Russ and Justin in the backfield, a little RPO, someone drops back, throws a ball, something. I mean, something fun. I mean, you're
Yeah.
not going to make You're not going to win the Super Bowl, so have fun with it. I know they want to have Justin learn from Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Like the one thing you want to learn is always have more touchdowns than toilets in your house. So that's really big. I think one year Russell had he had more toilets in his home than touchdowns. But I want to see, like, you know, can the Browns put it together, right? They have a big quarterback. They had a decent year last year. They were excited. The defense was exciting. Can they put it together? Will the Bengals get healthy? I mean, like, that's the big thing, and this is the year for them. And then will Kansas City, of course, turn a bunch of no-name receivers, into stars again? So we'll see how that works. But I mean, the best thing about this is, like, the NFL, it's a gift that keeps on giving, man. It's just when you think it's something else happens.
Yeah, and just when you think you have it all figured out, there's players that come out of the woodwork that you weren't expecting at all, or draft picks that came out in the 6th or 7th round that you didn't even know their name. But like Puka last year, for example, you're just like, who is this guy? And then there's teams that you think are going to be really average to middling, and they're great. You know, I never thought Tampa Bay was going to do what they did last year. So you just never know. And that could be I think Tennessee's kind of a dark horse. I think you got to watch out for them. There's going to be teams like that you're not expecting that are going to start surprising. So that's what I love about the NFL. You just never know, man.
Yep.
So, all right, good stuff, dude.
Yeah, and for those who watched the entire podcast, that was
marathon.
2 hours and 15 minutes, baby.
We might split it up. We might split it up for viewing. We might go AFC, NFC to break it down. But we covered a lot, man. I feel like we're ready.
We are ready. Everyone else, just watch out. Look, we clearly are the experts.
All right, Graham. Good to see you, buddy. And maybe we'll do some NFL draft, pick predictions before the draft hits, just for fun to see what happens there. But it's been a good time, man. And until the next time, man, be safe.
All right. See you guys.
See you guys.